You know, when you get in your car on a hot day or maybe just feel the air conditioning kick on at home or even in a big office building.
Yeah, climate control.
Exactly. Those systems, well, they rely on key parts like compressors to actually work.
Right, the heart of the system, really.
And today we're focusing on a specific type, the Compact Variable Compressor, or CVC.
CVCs. Yeah, these aren't your old school on or off compressors. They're much smarter.
Smarter how?
Well, they can adjust their output,
Anyway.
how much cooling or heating they provide based on exactly what's needed. They're variable.
Okay, so more precise control.
Exactly. And that's really key for saving energy and getting better performance. You find them in HVAC, cars, even industrial uses now.
Got it. So for this deep dive, we're actually looking at a specific market analysis report, right? Focused just on these CVCs.
That's the plan. We've got this detailed global report, and our mission basically is to unpack what it's telling us. The key trends, the numbers.
And the big picture. What does the report say right off the bat?
Well, it paints a picture of, honestly, a pretty significant market already. The report valued the global CVC market at, let's see, $133.46 billion. That was back in 2021.
Wow, 133 billion. That's substantial.
It is. And it's not staying there. The forecast shows some pretty major growth.
Right.
They're projecting it to reach around $245.21 billion by 2033.
Whoa, hold on. So from 133 billion to 245 billion. That's nearly double.
Pretty much, yeah. Nearly doubling in, what, about 12 years?
That's impressive growth. What kind of annual rate are we talking about?
The report calculates the compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, at 5.2% globally.
5.2%. Okay, so steady, consistent growth then. Not like a sudden spike, but really solid expansion year after year.
Exactly. Robust is the word they use, I think. And what's really interesting is where that growth is happening. The report breaks it down by region, by country, gives you a much clearer view.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. A global number is one thing, but how does it actually play out geographically? What does the report say about, say, North America?
All right, so North America, it held a pretty big slice of that pie in 2021. The value was pegged at $47 billion.
47 billion, okay.
And the report sees that growing quite steadily. It projects $58.3 billion by 2025, so fairly soon, and then hitting $88.5 billion by 2033.
And the growth rate there, the CAGR?
For North America overall, it's 5.4%.
5.4, okay. Slightly above the global average then.
Just a touch, yeah. And within North America, no huge surprise, the U.S. is the big player.
Makes sense. What are the U.S. numbers?
So the U.S. market was $33.3 billion of that $47 billion back in 2021. It's projected to climb to $41.7 billion by 2025 and then reach $64 billion by 2033.
$64 billion just for the U.S. and the growth rate there.
That's actually a bit higher again, 5.5% CAGR for the U.S. specifically.
Interesting. So the U.S. is really pulling that regional average up.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
The report suggests it really highlights how much these CVCs are being adopted, in cars and homes across the U.S.
Okay. So let's jump across the pond. What about Europe? How does it compare?
Europe's also a really strong market, according to the data. It was valued at $39.5 billion in 2021. So a bit smaller than North America, but still very significant.
39.5.
Right.
And the growth prediction?
Also looking solid. The report forecasts $49 billion by 2025 and then $74.5 billion by 2033.
And the CAGR for Europe?
It's actually pegged at 5.4%, so basically identical to North America's overall rate.
Huh. So similar growth trajectories then, broadly speaking.
Broadly, yes. But what's kind of interesting, within Europe, the report shows some variation. You've got the big economies like Germany, the UK, showing strong momentum as you'd expect with their auto and industrial sectors.
Right.
But then you look at markets like Russia, or the rest of Europe category they use, and their growth years are actually projected a bit higher. Over 5.5% for Russia and even 6.2% for the rest of Europe.
6.2%. That's quite a bit faster. Any idea why?
The report hints it could be specific local factors, maybe new regulations pushing efficiency, or perhaps certain emerging applications are just taking off faster in those areas.
Interesting nuance there. Okay, let's shift gears again. What about the Asia-Pacific region?
Right, Asia-Pacific. The market there was reported at $27.1 billion in 2021. Still substantial, but smaller than North America or Europe at that point.
27.1.
And the growth outlook.
Also significant growth projected. It's expected to hit $32.9 billion by 2025 and then climb more steeply to $48.8 billion by 2033.
Okay, and the overall regional CAGR.
For Asia-Pacific...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
And the overall regional CAGR.
For Asia Pacific as a whole, it's 5.1%, so slightly lower than North America or Europe.
5.1%. And within that region, obviously China is huge, but any other standouts?
Yeah, China is definitely the major player, no question. But the report specifically calls out India as one of the fastest growing markets there.
Oh, really? What's India's rate?
India's projected CAGR is 5.4%.
5.4, so noticeably higher than the regional average of 5.1%.
Exactly. And the report suggests this likely ties into, India's rapid urbanization, the growing middle class, more industrial activity, all things that drive demand for better cooling, better climate control. Makes perfect sense. More buildings, more cars, more need for efficient systems. Okay, what other regions does the report cover? Latin America.
Yep, Latin America. Brazil seems to be leading the charge there, according to the data. The market overall was smaller, starting at $4.7 billion in 2021.
$4.7 billion. Okay.
But Brazil's projected CAGR is quite robust, 5.6%.
5.6. That's actually higher than North America or Europe.
It is, yeah. It's projected to bring Brazil's market to $9.3 billion by 2033. It really indicates strong adoption trends taking hold in key Latin American economies.
Fascinating. Okay, last major region mentioned in the outline was the Middle East and Africa. How does that look?
That region seems to show somewhat more restrained growth compared to the others.
Okay.
Yeah, the report looked at countries like Egypt, Turkey, for example. Their TRs are more in the range of like 2.9% to 3.3%.
So noticeably slower growth there.
Definitely. The data suggests that while, yes, growth is happening, the pace just isn't as rapid as what we're seeing elsewhere. Could be different stages of industrial development, maybe different market dynamics for, air conditioning and cars in those specific areas.
Right. So putting all these regional pieces together, the report clearly shows this widespread expansion. But let's circle back to the why. What's fundamentally driving this consistent global demand for these CVCs in particular?
Well, the report is pretty explicit about this. It links the growth directly to the increasing demand for systems that are, number one, energy efficient, and number two, offer enhanced performance.
Okay, efficiency and performance. Makes sense.
Exactly. Because CVCs can adjust their output, they just use less energy compared to the old fixed-speed ones that were basically just full on or full off.
Right, no middle ground with the old ones.
Precisely. And that efficiency matters hugely. Think about cars. Better AC efficiency means better fuel economy or longer range for electric vehicles. And then for buildings, HVAC systems, energy savings are massive concerns, both for cost, obviously, and for environmental reasons, too.
And the performance side.
That variable nature, it just makes the systems more responsive. They can maintain a more consistent temperature, react quicker. It feels more comfortable. That's the performance enhancement the report talks about. They're sort of becoming the default choice wherever you need that precision and efficiency.
So if we kind of zoom out again and summarize the main takeaway from this deep dive into the report, what's the core finding?
I think the core finding is just this. The market for these compact variable compressors is seeing really robust, really consistent growth all around the world. And it's on track to, well, nearly double in value in just over a decade.
It's a massive expansion. And driven primarily by
that demand for energy efficiency and better performance. It's most obvious in cars and HVAC, the report says, but they're also pushing into industrial uses as well.
And we saw from the regional data that this is happening everywhere, right? Even if the speeds differ a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Growth across the board. Even if, the U.S., Germany, China are huge contributors, you've got faster rates of growth in places like India and Brazil.
Yeah.
It's a truly global phenomenon.
So when you think about it, this report is really showing us this huge growing market for a component that honestly affects things most of us use every single day. The climate control in our cars, the heating, the cooling in our homes, our workplaces.
It's quite fundamental technology.
Which kind of brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over, building on this report's focus on efficiency.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
If the demand for CVCs, which is partly driven by needing things to be more energy efficient, is creating a market projected to add, over $110 billion in value globally by 2033?
That kind of scale.
What does that sheer scale of growth suggest about the overall energy impact? I mean, does installing more efficient tech automatically mean we use less energy overall?
Or does the massive volume of new installations, even if they're more efficient per unit, mean that total energy demand from these applications just keeps going up anyway, maybe just a bit slower than it would have otherwise.
Exactly. It really raises a complex question, doesn't it, about that relationship between market growth, how efficient the technology gets, and ultimately how much total energy and resources we end up consuming on a global scale. Something to think about. Okay, let's jump right in. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking closely at something maybe small, but pretty significant in cars right now. Compact Variable Compressors, CVCs.
That's right. Specifically in the automotive market, we've got some recent market insights we've been reviewing.
Yeah, and our goal here is basically to unpack what they are, why they're becoming so important, what challenges they're up against, and sort of where this tech is going.
And crucially, what it all means for, your driving experience down the road.
Exactly. Think about your car's AC. It used to be pretty basic, right? On or off.
Mm-hmm. Blast cold or nothing.
But the future looks, well, a lot smarter, more efficient, and these CVCs seem to be right at the center of that shift.
They really are.
So what's actually pushing this CVC growth? What are the big forces?
Well, a huge one is the global push for fuel efficiency, lower emissions.
Right, the regulations.
Exactly. A standard AC compressor puts a real load on the engine. It's either on, drawing power, or it's off.
Burning extra fuel when it's on.
Precisely. But CVCs, they can adjust their output continuously. They vary the displacement.
Ah, okay, so it's like having a dimmer switch instead of just an on-off switch for the AC.
That's a great analogy, yeah. It means they only use the power that's actually needed at that moment to keep things cool.
Which cuts down the engine load.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Compared to the old fixed displacement types.
Yeah.
And that's key for hitting those tougher fuel economy targets everyone's chasing.
Makes sense. And what about electrification? The huge move.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Makes sense. And what about electrification? The huge move to EVs and hybrids. How do CVCs fit there?
Oh, they're almost tailor-made for EVs. Energy efficiency is everything in an electric vehicle, and space is tight.
Right. Battery range is paramount.
Exactly. CDCs tend to be more compact, fitting into those crowded EV platforms better, and their precise energy control means they sip less power from the battery.
Less drain, more range.
That's the goal. Managing energy effectively is critical, and CDCs play a big part in the thermal management system.
Okay, so regulations, electrification. But what about just us, the drivers? Do people just expect more comfort now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to be constantly fiddling with the temperature dials?
Yeah, it's annoying.
CVCs offer that consistency. Because they adjust automatically, they can keep the cabin temperature stable whether you're crawling in traffic or flying down the motorway.
So seamless climate control. Less fuss.
Exactly. It just makes for a more pleasant, comfortable ride overall.
Okay, so lots of good reasons for them to take off, but the sources also mention roadblocks. They're not in every single car yet.
No, not yet. The main hurdle really comes down to cost, the initial cost.
They're more expensive to make.
Yeah. They use more advanced materials. The engineering is more precise. There are complex electronics involved.
So manufacturing and integrating them costs more than the old school compressors.
Significantly more. And that cost difference can be a real barrier, especially for, entry-level vehicles or in markets where price is super sensitive.
And maintenance. Does that complexity cause issues later on?
It can, potentially. Servicing them isn't as straightforward. You've got intricate sensors, controllers, specific electronic components.
Need specialized skills and tools.
Right, which might limit where you can get them serviced, especially in the aftermarket.
Mm-hmm.
And it could drive up repair costs.
Yeah.
That's definitely a challenge in some regions where that expertise isn't widespread yet.
Okay. And there was something about market dependency, too.
Yeah, like a lot of specialized auto parts, their success is really tied to the ups and downs of the auto industry itself.
So tied to car production volumes.
Exactly. Demand depends heavily on how many cars are being built and on those close relationships with the automakers, the OEMs.
So if car production dips or an OEM changes strategy.
It directly impacts the CVC market. It adds a layer of market volatility.
Got it. Cost, complexity, market cycles, those are real challenges. But looking forward, what's next? What are the exciting trends shaping their future?
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. One big trend is linking CVCs with smart climate control systems.
Smart climate control. What does that actually look like?
Well, instead of just reacting to the temperature inside the car, the system starts becoming more predictive. It uses data.
Data from where?
Maybe navigation data, knowing you're heading into a hotter area, or external sensors, telematics, even driver profiles.
So it could like pre-cool the car before you get back to it on a hot day.
Exactly. Or adjust airflow subtly based on where the sun is hitting the car. It's moving towards, truly intelligent cabin environments, not just temperature.
Wow, okay. That sounds like a step change. What else?
There's also that constant push for miniaturization, making them smaller and lighter.
Without losing performance, presumably.
Right. That's key, especially for smaller cars. And again, for EVs, where every gram of weight saved can help with range and overall efficiency.
And are they staying just in cars and trucks?
No, actually. Another interesting trend is seeing them pop up in other places.
Like where?
Think premium motorcycles, maybe some agricultural equipment like tractors or even construction vehicles. Anywhere, operator comfort is becoming a higher priority.
Huh, interesting. New markets opening up.
Definitely. Beyond the traditional passenger car space.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. It sounds like the CVC market is, well, really dynamic. Lots driving it forward. Efficiency, EVs, comfort.
But also facing those real challenges, cost and complexity. It's a balancing act.
And these compressors are clearly getting more sophisticated, more adaptable.
Yeah, much more than just simple on-off devices.
Which brings it back to you, the listener. All this focus on smarter, variable, adaptive climate control powered by things like CVCs. What does that ultimately mean for how you'll experience future vehicles? Better comfort, sure, but maybe more.
Maybe a final thought to consider. As these CVCs get integrated with truly smart systems, vehicle telematics, maybe even AI, how could our whole idea of cabin comfort evolve?
Beyond just temperature, you mean?
Yeah. Could it become something truly personalized, predictive, adapting the entire environment around you as an individual in ways we haven't even fully thought of yet?
That's definitely something to mull over. A more intelligent environment, not just a controlled one.
Indeed.
Okay, that wraps up our deep dive today into compact variable compressors. Thanks for tuning in.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.